Awesome. So, John, I'm really looking forward to this, man. I think the few times we've been able to speak before, and it's funny, I want to share this with you right away before we get into this. But as I was kind of looking through and doing research and whatnot, and kind of diving down into, I guess, your past in a weird way,
Mhm.
I came across something interesting that I wanted to mention to you. For somebody who's rarely, if ever, in front of the camera and who's more behind the scenes, you're very
Mhm.
well spoken and articulate. And it's kind of like
Oh,
really impressive. Like you're really
that's,
well read. And I just wanted to share that with you before we get into that, because I was really impressed. I
oh,
was like,
well,
he's not in front of the camera, but he speaks better than most people I talk to. So
geez. Well, I'm speechless. That's what a way to start. I think that's a compliment to my parents for sure. Like they put a lot of stock into, my mom told me early on that she, for the rest of my life, will always, any book that I want, she'll buy
yeah,
it for me. Like, and
amazing.
that was the deal since I was a kid too. Like any book I wanted, it was like her go-to as far as she put up with video games, and she was pretty like accepting of me getting into film as well, but she always said like any book she'd buy it. She reads about 100 books a year in her
Jeez.
retirement, and she's just like a bookworm. And my dad had some pretty public facing jobs through his career as well, so I
Oh,
kind
nice.
of grew up around someone who was uh, in the, I mean, I don't want to say he was in the public eye, but he certainly had some public facing jobs. And I started out in theater. Like I was a theater kid from probably the age of like 10 until 15 or so, and then just kind of fell out of it. Sports became a bigger part of my life at that time, and theater got kind of squeezed out. But I guess all of those things kind of point to that. I
Nice.
don't know if anyone's ever told me that before, so I appreciate it. Thank
Amazing.
you.
Amazing, dude. Yeah, no worries at all. No worries at all. I mean it. So take us through kind of, maybe for people who don't know you or aren't familiar, take us through kind of your process or your story, sorry, leaving from like post-secondary era kind of until
Yep.
like where we are now, and then we'll kind of go back through it.
Cool. Yeah. So I grew up in Fredericton, New Brunswick, and then went to school at Acadia University, which is just a side note about Acadia. It's where I met my writing and producing partner, Rob Ramsey, who is a fan of the show and or a friend of the show. Sorry,
Nice.
fan also, I'm
Oh,
sure.
amazing.
So I went to Acadia and I studied political science. I originally started out as an English major, and I think I was hoping for it to be more of like creative writing,
Yeah.
which it ended up being more studying the classics. And I didn't have that part of my brain at that time at all. So didn't really work out in English. And so I switched over to political science, and I'm really glad that I did, and graduated from Acadia in 2011. And then in 2013, I studied screenwriting with the New York Film Academy. And since then, for the last 10 years, I've been living in Halifax, Nova Scotia, which is kind of what led us to Pug Crawl. Those are kind of like those are kind of the PowerPoint notes of how my life since university has led me to meeting Rob and now being the creator of Pub Crawl.
Nice. So is it true you're the youngest person to have a written something submitted to Harvard Law School? Like, tell me about that. Like, you
Yeah.
were 22, right? So I'm wondering when in that timeline, like, was that
Oh
after
yeah.
poli
I
sci?
guess.
I'm curious when that
Yeah. It
happened.
was.
That's
Yeah.
crazy to me.
That's what I've been told, and that was at the time. I think in 2012, 2013, Harvard had just turned 375. It was its
Jeez.
375th anniversary. And I had the opportunity. I mean, it's kind of like you're kind of stick handling around this to make this like an actual very niche thing.
Mhm.
But I was told that I was the youngest non graduate of Harvard to present written work.
Jeez.
Um, To be fair, so yeah, I guess that's true on paper, but then it's like my written work was a short documentary that I was credited as the writer for. And we presented at the Harvard Trade Union program in 2012. The film had its premiere there, and that was a film called Drink 'Em Dry.
Yeah.
And that was about the, there was a lockout at Moosehead Breweries, which is in St. John, New Brunswick. And I just had the opportunity to work on that documentary, and it did kind of start me down my path, like into documentary, unscripted work. I was fresh out of, that was in between Acadia and the New York Film Academy. So I was just kind of getting my feet wet in the film side of things. Like, obviously I was always a huge cinephile before that, but didn't realize it. Okay. And then when that film started to have more success and reaching like a way broader audience than I ever thought that it would, it kind of did help to think like, oh, maybe there is a career path in this.
Yeah.
So that's when I started to apply to a bunch of film schools to try and do my master's in screenwriting. And I was working full time at the time. And a lot of the film schools that I got into, I would have been like an international student at a lot of these schools that I got into. So there's more of a tax on international students at those schools. And plus I was getting into schools in places like Prague, London, New York, LA. And I just like could not ever afford that, to not only go to these schools, but also live there. And the New York Film Academy had I got into the master's program there, and we kind of worked something out. It sounds so funny that we worked it out, and now it's like an everyday thing. I did classes from home. So in Halifax, I was able to complete my screenwriting classes, homework, everything. Like the first work from home situation I'd been in my life was the New York Film Academy, I suppose. And now it's just like an everyday thing for everyone.
Nice. So with that, and how kind of like, what do you, looking back kind of on that time period, let's go before Pub Crawl, what do you believe is like, do you have a favorite piece that you've worked on so far? Like,
that's a great question. It's always weird to like watch the stuff, and especially,
do you watch the stuff back once it's like published and stuff, or do you get like anxious about that?
Yeah,
like, no.
I get super anxious about it. I get very anxious about it. I get really nervous if I'm ever at a film festival or have to like present the film as a Q&A, and then
that never gets easier.
Not for me. I think that I think that it gets easier on like a project by project basis. Like the first time you present a film, it's terrifying. The fifth time you're presenting that same film, it's a little bit easier.
Right.
And now I find watching it from home alone, I do it not often, but like I'll watch a short film maybe once a year that I made. And there are some cringeworthy moments about like, just like young filmmaking choices or young writing choices or young directing choices or whatever. But I directed a short called Missy, and that ended up being purchased by CBC for distribution. And that movie, I'm strangely like every year I'm like, okay, this is the time that I'm going to hate Missy, and I'm going to notice something that I've never seen before. Yeah. And then each year it's just like, oh, that was pretty good. Like that's not, so I guess like that's the low bar that I've set, is that as far as like favorite projects, it's like, oh, yeah, Missy isn't bad.
So what I'm curious about is, so what level of success, I guess, kind of seemed realistic to you when you first started out your filmmaking career? Or like, what like accomplishment, like what was the bare minimum accomplishment that you had to feel that you've like, this is a success, or I've made it in this industry?
I just wanted to be able to pay rent. Like that was the goal. It continues to be the goal. And like it's just like this whole industry seems like such a playground and such a like, it doesn't feel like I have a job ever. Like there's a ton of work that goes into it, but as far as having a job, it's kind of a dream life for me, just to be able to support myself doing the things that I do. So yeah, I guess like success is a intimidating, subjective, weird word.
Yeah, it's very
But
umbrella term too.
yeah, I was always just like really excited to be involved and be on set and see things behind the scenes. Like I fell in love with movies right around the time the DVDs came out, and they started all of a sudden having like bonus features.
Yeah.
So I got to see like behind the scenes of how movies were being made when I was like in grade 7, and like very being able to be influenced by that kind of stuff. That's where I was interested in movies before that. But then when that stuff came out, I was like sold. And like watching a DVD like The Perfect Storm, and then being able to watch like the bonus features on that, I was just like completely blown away, and just always wanted to be around other people. Like I grew up playing team sports, so that was always a big thing for me, and my family's really close, and I always just wanted to be around cool, funny people.
Right.
And so that has always just kind of stuck with me as far as success goes. Like I feel very successful in the sense that I get to do this every day and make shows with my friends and make movies with my friends, and hopefully try and tell stories that people otherwise wouldn't be able to see or hear. And yeah, super fortunate.
I think looking in from an outsider into the industry, it seems like a lot of fun. Like, yes, there's the work aspect to it. That's kind of synonymous with anything you're doing, especially if you're trying to make something out of that industry. But I think it looks so much fun from an outsider, because like you said, being able to go around, meet all these new people and share stories that are not just, which to me is what intrigues me a lot, right? And we'll get like dive into the pub crawl aspect after, but that's what kind of gravitated me towards like your style and stuff, like being able to kind of like bite-size films and being able to tell a story that doesn't seem rushed to the point or dragged out is incredible. And even like after we chatted last weekend, I watched like multiple videos on the act structure. And you're right, it did absolutely ruin movies, because after I watched that, in my head, the way I think, John, is I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go watch more movies now, and then try to point it out. Bad idea.
I shouldn't have done that. It's a good exercise. Good exercise as far as like strengthening those writing muscles or whatever. But yeah, it is. It's like you said, it's fun, and this is what I find fun. And there are a lot of parts of the job that wouldn't necessarily be fun to other people, but that's fair about jobs that I don't have, that other people get complete joy out of. And I think, oh man, that would be a nightmare for me, like personally. But then there's a lot of stuff about filmmaking that is a huge drag to other people, and I just find it kind of fascinating. There's so many roles in film, like whether you are like producing is so much different from editing, and editing is so much different from writing, and all of those things are so much different from directing. And something about my personality, those are the things that I like to do. So it just happens to be this kind of job or position or whatever you want to call it that for whatever reason I just really enjoy.
Nice. Now, you mentioned like all the different roles or hats one might wear. Do you have a favorite, or what's kind of the difference between them? Like my big curiosity point on that is, what's the difference, I guess, between producer and director? Because I kind of have the general like oversight of what I think they might be, but just to clarify, because I feel there's a lot more to it.
Sure. And like I don't want to give I can't give like a definition that everyone will agree on. But what I think about it is, so producing is a lot of literally like project management is probably the best way to think of that. It's like, okay, we need to say you're filming a scene in a bar. It requires 4 actors, a team for sound, a team for camera, and we need to buy a location to film there for that day, and it needs to all happen on March the 12th between noon and 4 p.m. It's the producer's job to make that happen. So you're on the phone a lot and you're answering a lot of emails when you're a producer. There's a lot of stress when it comes to producing because, like I said, it's like you have to, like, if you don't plan that, it doesn't happen. Like, there's no alternative to it. Like, you know what I mean? So there's a lot of pressure there. But then it's kind of a fun part of the job because you get to pitch yourself and pitch a project to people who will then like either say like, yeah, I want to be involved in that. What can I do? And whether that's like the owner of a bar that you need to rent out or that you need to use their space or a sound person that you're trying to find. It's a lot of problem solving.
Right. Amazing.
Which can be fun and can be really stressful. And then directing is very much like when you, on the day when you walk into the set, it's like, it's your vision of what this thing is going to look like when it's completely done. And no one else can see that but you at that point. So there is a lot of like trust involved in that and getting people to sign off on trusting you as far as whatever your vision is. And just also being on set is a ton of fun too.
Yeah. It always looks like a blast.
Yeah. That's being on set is the most rewarding part of the job, I think. And also like from a production standpoint, like producing standpoint, I love to be able to hire people and like offer them jobs and like find people that I haven't worked with before or find people that I have worked with before and it went really well. And it's like seeing old friends again once you guys all walk onto set and everybody's kind of together. And yeah, so that's kind of the difference, I suppose, between producing and directing.
Now, do you have an example of somebody that, like you said, made kind of a bigger impact on you in terms of working experience than you expected them to have? Like it's, oh, I'm hiring them to fill this position. But at the end of the day, it's like, oh, man, that went really well. Really cool person. We became friends, like that kind of thing. Do you have an example of that? Somebody made an impact that way?
Yeah, well, if you think about it, like Rob and I were on the same floor in residence at Acadia, and
amazing.
At that time, like he was in theater and I was in political science, hadn't done anything in film at all, and he was like this big cool actor who in the summers away from Acadia would go back to Toronto and be in like Disney shows and whatever, and then come back and tell us all about it in the fall. And so then Rob, after I went to the New York Film Academy and I sent him my thesis film, because that entire program was like based around us developing like a 120-page script, the 3-act structure that we talked about the other day.
Yeah,
I sent it to Rob, and just because he was someone I knew in the industry, and I honestly think I was like, hey, I don't know if you remember me, but we were in Acadia together, at Acadia together. Amazing. And he was doing Blue Mountain State at the time. So I think he was in Montreal, or he may have been in LA at this point. And he read it and it was like, this is cool. We should like write a short together. And that was in 2012. So nice. 2011, 2012, end of 2011, early 2012, Rob and I like started working together. And then, he's one of my best friends. So I guess that's a really good opportunity. And then
that's so cool. Yeah.
From like the other end of the spectrum is my best friend growing up is a guy named Mike Corby. And Mike and I, looking back, we were talking to somebody like this week. We were like, yeah, I guess looking back, like we went to a lot of movies as kids and like rented a lot of movies and went to Blockbuster a lot. And then when things started happening as far as like short films, and when we like Rob and I we had zero experience producing or anything like that, we made a short film. And Mike was like, yeah, I'll come down and I can help. Like, I'll do whatever you need me to do. Like, I'll drive people, I'll pick up coffees in the morning, whatever. It should also be mentioned that Mike Corby is like possibly the funniest human being on the planet.
Amazing.
And so that kind of shifted into on 2 short films of mine. He was then my first assistant director. And then on first season of Pub Crawl, he was a production coordinator. And now season 2, he's a producer. So it's Rob, Mike, and I are the producers on Pub Crawl. I'm like, so it's kind of like Rob, we started out as like, hey, do you remember me? Will you please read this thing? And now we're like best buds. And Corby and I started out like best friends who are now the 3 of us are producing together.
Amazing.
Another side note to that story was Corby was my roommate at Acadia. So he also knew Rob as long as I have. So the 3 of us working together is pretty easy. You know,
nice.
like
no kidding.
My meetings that I have are with Corby and Rob. So it's a blessing to work with those 2.
Now, from what you're saying and from like a couple conversations I've had with Rob in the past, how do you guys like focus and get work done? Because it sounds like you're just like it sounds like a blast, but at the same time, like, oh, does that not take away from, because I have friends who I've done work with and we get nothing done in the time. So I'm wondering how you manage to kind of compartmentalize the friendship.
It's it's hard. It's really hard, because what Rob and I try and do is like, we speak every day, and Zoom calls are hard to get work done or focus on or whatever. So once a year we try to get together like for a week, and we typically go somewhere remote.
Nice.
So we went to a place called Ojai, California a couple of years ago, and we both lived in a trailer together.
Amazing.
Just like zero distractions. And then
like off the grid.
Pretty much pretty off the grid. Like there was one night that we were like, we got to get out of here. We got to like call a cab and like, let's go out for dinner or something. And we called a cab, and they were like, the earliest I can be there, let's say we called at 6 p.m. and they're like, we can be there at 8:30, and there's no guarantee you'll be able to get home. And it's like, okay.
Come on.
So yeah, we just try and get away from stuff, because we do get pretty distracted. And then another example, we went to a cottage in northern New Brunswick. This year we're going to a cottage in northern Ontario, and it is just to like get ourselves away from as much distractions. And honestly, by day 2 or 3, I know that we drive each other crazy. So honestly, it's like what I said before, it's like we realize that like no one's going to do this work for us.
Right.
So let's do this work kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think that like there are times when I start to stray, and he's really good at bringing me back and keeping me interested in a project that we're working on, keeping me involved, or like kind of like reality checking me. And then there are other times where I can do the same for him. So that works really well as well. But yeah, I mean, typically it's like first couple of days, it's like, oh, we'll start up in the morning, and then we wake up in the morning. It's like, well, okay, let's start at 3. We have some like stuff to do around the house or whatever. Yeah. And then by day 3 or 4, it's like, okay, we're running out of time. It's very much like it's a group project every time, I guess is the best way to describe it.
Oh, that's awesome. What I'm wondering a bit about, what's your creative process like when it comes to documentaries versus like films and TV shows and stuff like that? Like, is there a specific set of things you do to kind of dive into what story you want to tell? Or is there just like, it depends on the project?
I think that it certainly matters or changes depending on it matters. The project matters. It depends on the project. Right. It's funny what the motivations can be. Like I mentioned Missy, and Missy we had a friend's cottage. It was a great location, and we were like, what could we use this location for? And it was Rob and I's second short film together. And so Rob was going to act in it. So then it became like, okay, what could we do with this location? And like just Rob as an actor, as the only person in the film. And so that kind of came out of that. So you write it and you send it to whoever you need to send it to for notes. They give you notes back. You keep like kind of like, first you start off with like a machete, and then you go in with a steak knife, and then by the end of it you're using like a fine tooth comb kind of thing when you're going through a script. And then so that's, I mean, that's like a narrative short, I guess. But then documentary or unscripted stuff, it's very much, it's the same process but it's different, I guess is the best way to put it. Like I'm working on a project right now where it's very historical in a sense, but it's almost how the past 400 years affected this man's life, and then how will this man affect the next 400 years or the next 7 generations. And with that one, it was about, like, if you're looking at the 3x structure, it's the same thing. And it's like, okay, well, where's our midpoint? What happened to him? What's his midpoint? What is Canada as a whole's midpoint? And it's kind of this, it's the same questions. But with documentaries, you certainly start to like turn over some rocks that you didn't think that you would. And I mean, that happens when you're writing narrative as well. But yeah, it always has to start with a good story, I guess, is my very long-winded answer for that question.
Nice. So if it's related to the story that we the story we kind of talked about a bit this past weekend. But so I was telling a friend of mine, actually newer friend of mine, met a couple weeks ago, but I was telling him that this kind of Tuesday about like the episode and stuff, and kind of give him like a bit of a history on like some cool stuff you've done and you're doing. And so I mentioned that, and he then segued. So I'm not going to give away the name, but he's going to be directing an outdoor center during the summer, right? Up in Ontario. And he's making the executive decision to not do O Canada every morning.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So typically, I'm not sure if you're familiar how those are run, but when there's a group, they usually get, what would happen is we would get a group of people, like the cabins or all the people, right? Group up and do morning circles, like any announcements, weather, like what's the meal, breakfast of the day, whatever, right?
Kind of thing,
exactly. And then they always do O Canada. And they've been doing that every year since I've been. But he's like, I'm going to make the conscious decision not to. And I'm not making a thing where I'm going to tell people. It's just something that's not going to happen. And I'm like, he told me, went down the road about why. And I'm like, amazing. Love it. And then he's like, yeah, I haven't actually told anybody else. I was like, oh, that's terrifying. But right on.
Trustworthy face.
So, yeah, no kidding. So
yeah, that
was interesting.
Every day at my high school, we stood for O Canada.
Every single day.
It just wasn't a thing then, I suppose. Or just like, it just is what you did. So that was it.
Yeah, and it's just taking it away. So I was like, huh, interesting. But yeah, that's kind of, he segued that out after me sharing what kind of bits of whatever you shared me about the documentary series, the documentary. So I was like, oh, no way. I was just like curious. I was like, huh, interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not going to share that.
I think there were certainly, I mean, what happened in Kamloops and what continues to happen across Canada at the residential school on those lands is something that like we can't, I don't know, sweep under the rug anymore. And I think that there's going to be a lot of fallout, good and bad, or depending on what side of the coin you're on, how you just like subjectively say what is good and bad on those issues. There's going to be, I think there's a lot of changes coming, and I've noticed it in the last 2 years in Halifax. We have a lot of conversations now about statues coming down and high schools having their names changed. And it came up, as weird as it sounds, but it came up in season 2 of Pub Crawl with one of the locations that we were at. And you, like I said, you just need to be able to show people stories that they won't typically otherwise hear. And I think I am hopeful that people are empathetic enough that it won't be them being hit out of left field when they start to hear about some of these things. So when we submitted that particular episode for for season 2
Mm-hmm.
to Bell. I was nervous only in the sense because it was like complete right turn on the fun Irish bars that we typically go to, or like the big Friday nights that we have in Halifax. And that is what the show has become, which is great. And we should celebrate those places, but we couldn't ignore the true history of some of these places. So I was a little bit nervous that we had kind of taken a right turn for one particular episode. Belle was fully supportive, loved it from the get-go.
Nice.
And
That's
it is
easy.
certainly the episode that I've had the most feedback about, which makes me super happy. And I think in not only from like it's a pub crawl, so I'm glad people are enjoying it, but just gives me kind of some hope that no one has thrown a rock at their TV while watching that episode. So
Yeah, I definitely haven't. And well, that'll segue nicely into kind of into the pub crawl conversation I want to have. So the other day, so I watched it, right? So I went to my folks' house.
Awesome.
And now, yeah, so you caught that I watched it. My mom was born and raised in Halifax. And so I was like, yeah, so I was like, Mom, I'm watching this. If you want to bond, I used a trigger word with her. So I was like, if you want to bond, sit on the other couch. We can watch this together. And then so, yeah, every single bar, it was kind of funny because of how I was like, this is like, I've had him on. I'm like, we're going to be discussing this. And she's like, oh, no way. I'm like, yeah, it's pretty cool. And she's like, oh, cool. And then she's like, she was really, really invested. It was really cool to see. She's like, oh, I've been there. And like the excitement kind of, I didn't expect. Awesome. I was like, oh, it's filmed in Halifax. You might get a kick out of it. And then it turned into like being like, shh, I'm watching this. I want to, so.
You know, what's funny is that one thing that we didn't aim for, but was great about season 1. And then I'm sure it's happening with season 2 as well, was that we had a lot of people say, like, people from out west saying that, like, oh, my dad went to SMU, or my mom went to Dal in the 70s or the 80s. No. And they see an episode like the Lower Deck and they're like, oh my God, I haven't been there since 1984. It looks the exact same. And like those kind of stories are like, yeah, just buddies who we didn't even think of, like, what we weren't expecting were, we thought of a lot of people like, okay, Halifax will be a pretty like good audience for us. Nova Scotia, the Maritimes, maybe people who left Halifax and now live in Toronto or Vancouver or whatever, we'll get them. But we totally didn't think of the people who just came out here for 4 years of university and then left again. And they became like a staple as far as like our audience goes. So that was super cool. Yeah, that was great. And like my dad was one of them. Like my dad grew up in New Brunswick, but went to Dal. Oh, nice. So he was always like pitching me bars that I should go, that we should do. And it's like, Dad, that bar has been closed since like 1994. Yeah. And he's like, what?
What do you mean?
Yeah. No, but that's a cool thing about the show, is that like when you tell people that that's what you work on, people get it immediately. Like you don't have to explain what the show is. And honestly, most conversations, people start pitching me bars like immediately, because everybody has that neighborhood bar that they used to go to, or the first time I turned 19, or the first time I successfully used a fake ID, or my dad and I used to go to this one all the time, or my mom and I every Friday after work would meet here. Like all these, every community has one. And so, yeah, that's been an awesome experience hearing those stories from people too.
Nice. I think like I used it's funny you mentioned that. I used a fake ID story. Like I have a fake ID story from, I don't know the name. It was in like 2000 and I think 15, because I had a good buddy who lived in Halifax for like, I met him first semester, we clicked, and then he moved. So he moved out there. So I'd gone like 3 or 4 different times, like out and back and from Ottawa. And so I had turned 18, but the nice thing with Ottawa is Quebec's right there. So you get an extra year. But as I'm sure you and many other people watching and listening will relate, the first year of post-secondary is a write-off. Like it's just gone. But what ended up happening is, so my birthday is July 1st. So it's 0701. So I was
I think I know where
turning.
this is going. Yeah.
Yeah, I was turning. So when I went, my buddy was born in like March or something, I think mid-March. So when it was April and then late April, May, when I went up with him the first time, or I went to visit him, sorry, the first time, I was able to use that 2 months before. Nothing crazy. It was like, oh, it's 2 months away, but it was like, excuse me, sir, your birth, it says July 1st. Like, no, it's actually Ontario, first
Yeah.
of
And that worked,
7th of
eh?
January. Yeah. Yeah, it worked.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, it was
I've
great.
got a crazy one. Someone that I grew up with, when she got her driver's license, they just completely messed up the year. So on her, what was actually her 18th birthday, her driver's license legally said she was 19.
No,
Yeah, and she just like never mentioned it. Obviously, like I was like,
amazing.
that's pretty good for a 16-year-old to have. Like, I don't know if she noticed it on the spot or what, but
Yeah.
yeah. See, there's like again, everybody has those kinds of stories, and it's been
Jeez.
awesome to try and like shed light on as many of those as possible in Halifax.
Yeah. Now, how did that kind of get from your perspective, right? How did that kind of get started? Like pub crawl as a whole? How did that from the idea to kind of where we are now?
Yeah, so it would have been around this time, 2020. So the pandemic was like pretty fresh. Maybe it was more so May. And it's funny because like I pitched the show never thinking about the pandemic. Like bars at the time when I pitched the show were closed
Right.
with no end in sight kind of thing. And I don't know if Bell overlooked that as well, but the pitching process and them agreeing to it was all pretty quick. Like I sent them a few ideas. They particularly wanted to talk about pub crawl.
Mhm.
Hey, John, can we set up a time to chat? They loved the idea of Rob as a host. Like things really moved quite quickly. And so that was in May. And by August, we were shooting season 1 right in between like the first and second wave out here. And we did like our government did a great job with COVID for the longest time. And bars opened up again, thankfully.
Nice.
And Rob flew in and had to quarantine for 2 weeks. Like we had to bring him out 2 weeks sooner than originally expected. So that was like, you talk about like producing, that was like a producing issue for a while, and moving budget around to make sure that Rob had a place for 2 weeks and had groceries for 2 weeks and everything like that. So yeah, and then we shot season 1. And what was great about season 1 is that we went to these bars with we had nothing other than we have a show with Bell, and this is what we're up to, and we'd really like to come film here. And all of them to a T were like, yeah, immediately, yes, please. I think that they needed a bit of good news kind of thing. Like they needed a positive story.
Yeah.
So they were all so enthusiastic about having us in. They were all great. And then with season 2, when we actually had, we got word from Bell that we were renewed. That was amazing. It was amazing for like 10 minutes. And then we were like, oh man, we gotta get back to work. Like we gotta make a season 2 now. And so we started going out to other bars, and it was much, I don't want to say it wasn't any easier, but it was much simpler to be able to say like, we have a show. Some of them had seen it, which was awesome.
Nice.
And the pitching to bars for season 2 was much easier because we were like, hey, here are the episodes from season 1. If you want to be involved, we would love to chat with you. And
Nice.
yeah, and our goal with season 2 was like, we didn't want to recreate the wheel at all, but we wanted to just make it that 10 to 15% better. We wanted to just like take the show to the next level. We were able to secure some like famous Haligonians as far as like the locals go. And the way that the show works is Rob starts an episode and goes into a bar and chats with like a manager or an owner or whoever, and then starts talking to someone typically just at the other end of the bar. And then that person is a local who that's their watering hole kind of thing. And then they suggest the next bar, and that sends Rob on the pub crawl. So this season we were able to get some like higher profile Haligonians who had seen the show and liked the show or had reached out. And it just became like it was a bit more fun of a process because we all knew what we were doing and we all knew what worked from season 1 and what didn't. And it made each day a little bit all like they weren't 12-hour days anymore. They were 8-hour days because we knew we didn't have to dedicate so much time over here. We could dedicate it to here or whatever. Like the schedule became easier. And now we're able to just try and promote this show as much as possible. And hopefully we get a ton of people to watch it. And hopefully the majority of them like it.
Yeah. Well, I hope so too. Like I'm rooting for you guys for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, man, for sure. My 2 favorite parts, I'm gonna openly tell you right now. One, they're tied, like they're for whatever reason, but Rob's lines at the beginning.
Oh yeah.
Like over the B-roll, like just the one-liners. I think he said "tap the keg," or he said "carpe dead." And just like a couple things, there are a couple different ones he used. I can't quite remember exactly.
Crappe diem.
Yeah. Oh no. I could not stop laughing at those. So those paired with that amazing intro.
Oh,
like
awesome.
bumper. Both got me. Both 2 different things completely. That and then because I already knew kind of what to expect from a storytelling aspect from season 1, which sold me on watching season 2 and us being here. So so those 2 things just got me really hyped up. I just got to
that's awesome.
So
and that was always the goal. Editing the intro was like we had the opportunity to use this, like our great theme song is by an artist, a local artist. I believe he's Cape Breton originally and now he's Toronto, by a DJ named Shreem. And the first time Rob and I heard the song, it was pitched to us about another project that we were doing, and it just didn't work out and we didn't use it. And then when we were thinking of what the theme song for Pub Crawl could be, we were like, remember that song by the guy Shreem? And we were like, yeah. So we reached out to them, and that was just supposed to be like the intro was just supposed to be a hype video, 100%. Like 40 seconds of like it. And trying really hard with like the beat drop and like dropping the needle on the song and having a good kind of outro line, whether it's the voiceover, as you mentioned in the beginning, to line up with that needle drop at the beginning, or having a great exit line before the outro of the show after they agree to what bar Rob's going to go to next. Like the trying to keep that recency effect as high as possible at the end of each episode, so people would want to watch whatever was coming up next. But yeah, you just reminded me that season 1 we got a lot of season 1's in particular we got a lot of quality feedback, and I guess that's kind of how season 2 bloomed, was out of the feedback that we got from season 1. So honestly, that was always the goal, was to get renewed, but we were happy with even the way season 1 ends. It's like that could be the series, and then we tried to do that with the end of season 2 as well, just like because we don't know. And it's been a pretty crazy ride the last couple of years.
Nice. Well, I'm curious, what did you guys do in season 2, or like what lesson did you learn from season 1 that you did or didn't do in season 2?
That's such a good question. We made sure first of all, we were a very well-oiled machine after season 1, because it is like it's a sprint and it's a marathon, if that makes any sense, like as far as the shooting days go. We knew how to be like more confident with what we were asking of people, whether it was bar managers, owners. We did have more of a leg to stand on with season 2. And we did kind of all agree that we wanted to take bigger swings with season 2. So but as far as like lessons learned from season 1, I think that we did a good job. Like we never really dealt with any diva bar owners.
Amazing.
Which was like pure luck season one, but also there was one bar in particular that the community, so we've done 13 bars at this point, and I've gotten to know the owners and the managers for each of these locations, and they're all great people. And you kind of have like a little bit of insight in that community. And there is a bar in town that they told us to avoid. They're like, you don't want to deal with.
Like all of them said that.
Yeah, because they would ask, like, who else are you doing? What other bars are you doing? Like, blah, blah, blah. Have you ever thought of this place or that place? Or some of them also, like, they made recommendations as far as, like, oh, you should speak to Victor at Seahorse, or you should speak with Joe at Dirty Nelly's, or have you reached out to blah, blah, blah at this place? And then, there was, like, after the third or fourth time that someone said, like, oh, how were they to deal with? Kind of thing about this one bar, and then it just became, okay, let's not. Yeah, we don't want to have. It's hard enough doing these things. It's hard enough to get through a day on set, and it's hard enough to produce those episodes. So it's like, if we can keep like the vibe on set up and happy and jovial, and beers at the end of every day with everybody, because everybody enjoys each other's company.
For sure.
That was great. I think one lesson we may have learned from season one was to like take it easy a little bit at the end of these days. Like, you arrive at most days we would arrive at the bar at 10 a.m. and we would do the interview, and it's like, I don't know how many bars you've been in at 10 a.m. when they're empty before they open, but it's certainly a handful.
More than I'd like to admit, I'm sure.
Yeah. It's an odd, you gotta go pick up your debit every once in a while, but like, it is an odd feeling. And sometimes by the end of the day, there are a few days there's just like, we got to get out of here. Like, we've been here for 12 hours and it's starting to fill up. And most of the time you are completely sober, and then people start recognizing Rob, and it just becomes a shit show very quickly. And we have tons of equipment that need to get out to the van to get carefully that out here. Too. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Season two, I think we were all just a little bit more mature about everything as far as like wrapping up the end of the day. Not to say though, there were like the night that we filmed an episode at Dirty Nelly's on a Saturday, and then we had Sunday and Monday off.
Nice.
And the owners and the managers at Dirty Nelly's were so supportive and so happy for us to be there that they got us a table that night with, it's like they had a live band and everything. And it was, that was a big late Saturday night.
Amazing. So why, so for people who don't know, it's about, Pub Crawl is about 6-7 episode seasons, right? 12 to like 15-minute long episodes designed to be, and Rob said this, I believe it was a while ago we chatted, but it's meant to be bingeable.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Right?
I think the best compliment that maybe my favorite compliment or feedback is that people said that they would hear about the show on a Saturday night out with friends, and then they would watch it the next morning on the couch, kind of thing. Amazing. And each episode, as mentioned, like, they do roll into each other very well, where at the end of the Dirty Nelly's episode, someone says Barely's, and a minute and a half later we're there with Rob speaking with the manager at the start of episode 4, kind of thing. So yeah, definitely, like, that's a really, really good way of putting it. And like you mentioned, like, short form filmmaking and short form storytelling is so important. Yeah. And they're obviously, like, I grew up watching the 3-act Hollywood 90-minute films, and I love those to death. But sometimes you just want to be able to consume something a little bit quicker. So yeah, that was another great compliment that we got was season 1 came out the day that Nova Scotia went back into lockdown. I think it was November. It would have been November 2020. So that's when the second wave officially started. And so a lot of people were watching it with friends on Zoom. Like that was their Saturday night, was because they couldn't go out. So they would like get buddies together. Specifically thinking of a guy in Toronto who I used to work with, and he went to Dal. And so him and all of his former roommates got together on Zoom and watched the show because it was all their bars kind of thing that they used to go to. And it was like the closest thing that they could have to actually going out at that time and being social and seeing other people. So yeah, that was super cool. And they use it as like their pre-drink thing. So
nice.
Season 2, we leaned into that a bit, and we have like an official drinking game for season 2. Yes. And yeah.
Amazing.
Bingeable.
Yeah. That was the trigger word. And I was like, it's perfect. Yeah. So as kind of everything like not comes to an end, but I guess as everything kind of, you've done a lot of different projects, right? And worked on a lot of different things and stuff. And now, what is one thing you wish you knew before starting your own production company?
How to do taxes. No, I'm just kidding. That is a good one, though. Important, though. I think that for a long time I was reluctant to had just an ego about getting out and meeting people and being social and like being social within the industry, like thinking I could do it all myself, which is such bullshit. That was such a stupid thing to think. So I just try and get out and meet as many people as I can. And being like the pub crawl guy or whatever, a lot of them, you just go out for a beer with people after work and meet them and meet cool filmmakers and photographers in town. And these are people who end up like working on the show or working on any kind of project that I'm doing. And just realizing that like it is such a collaborative industry, and not to be precious about any ideas that you have. And 9 people out of 10 are trying to help you and want to help and are good people. I think that there are snakes in the grass, like there are in any industry.
Oh yeah.
But I just think that people do inherently want to be helpful. And honestly, like no matter how successful they are to a degree, they will get something out of a conversation with a filmmaker who's just starting out as well. So
yeah,
I've been really fortunate to meet some really cool people just by cold calling or cold emailing and just trying to like expand my circle a little bit. Nice. It's like what the story I told about Rob earlier. Like that's how we met, was a cold email 10 years ago. Is
it not cool though how like I stress with people the like severity of the cold call or the cold message or something that's reaching out, right? Because I'll tell, for example, with the podcast, right? I'll tell somebody about the guest I'm having on. And they're like, how do you meet these people? Like, what's going on? Yeah. They're so different. They're all of different, whatever abilities and skills. And they're all just all really cool people. So I'm like, well, and I just tell them, like, you ask.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You're not going to get it. Like,
you just ask. I've never had somebody say no. Like I've never, they just don't see it, which is probably better.
It is interesting. Like I had a conversation recently about pub crawl and how, and I'm sure you can relate to it with hosting a podcast and producing your own podcast. It's like, it's kind of a win-win. Like the show it's great for us when people say yes, that they want to be involved, whether again, it's a bar or someone that we can interview. It's free publicity for the most part for these bars, and marketing material for them and content for them and their social media. And like, I think that there is a lot more of that can happen, but people do get frozen or whatever, or caught in their own head about like, well, I don't want to come off as pushy or whatever. And it's like, well, then you just don't come off as pushy then.
It's pretty easy to not. Yeah, it's pretty easy to do that. And if you're a genuinely good person, being able to make that connection, it's going to happen. Like there's got to be less stress on it.
Yeah,
Like,
and I find like it's a fine line between like, you get a random DM about like, hey, we want you to be an influencer for our clothing company on
yeah,
Instagram or whatever that copy and paste message is, versus
horrendous.
getting a genuine like, hey, I really think your stuff's cool.
Yeah.
I would love to take you out for a coffee or a beer sometime and bend your ear about the industry.
Hmm.
Um, and like I to your point, like I don't think it's ever worked for me where I'm like, hey, I'm John. I really need this from you. It's always
Yeah.
been like, it's like a slow burn. And that's, I mean, sorry, it's a slow burn. And like, you meet people instead of like, you meet the person first, as opposed to meeting the professional job version of them.
Hmm.
And I mean, that's a way better approach, I think. And you should just surround yourself with people that you would want to spend a lot of time with, stressy time with on stressy time with on set.
Yeah.
Because like at the end of the day, they're the ones who usually get you through it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So yeah, that's been kind of my approach. And that's a long-winded answer of saying like, I wish I'd had the confidence and the ability to know how to approach those professional situations, as far as networking goes earlier.
Right. And I think that comes with that one specifically, though. The problem is you only get better by doing more of it and building like a resilience to people saying no. So it's like you need 100 people to say no before you're used to somebody saying no. So that it was a weird thing. Like I had a friend of mine and I were talking about this, like rejection therapy was the idea of like asking for things with the intent of them saying no. Because if they say no, you've succeeded in building that resilience to it. But then the times that I used it, it was really weird because the times I'd use it, I would just ask these people I know like around town for these like absurd things. And they're like, oh, okay, that's not supposed to happen. Like they aren't supposed to say yes. So it's stuff like that where it's like you build a resilience to it, but in the same time, you get these people saying yes to something that they're supposed to say no to, or you expected them, I guess would be better. Right. So
yeah. And it's funny too, because I have friends, and I don't have any problem reaching out to people. I never have, but I think I just got better at how to communicate myself when reaching out.
That's smart.
And I know people who are like tremendously successful in this industry, and they would rather do stand-up comedy in front of 10 million people than send a cold email and get no as a response. Wow. Like that would just like destroy their soul to hear no, or like putting your neck out there. And it's like, at the end of the day, I mean, the stakes aren't super high in my industry. You know what I mean? Like, you hearing no from a producer that you admire isn't no one, you know what I mean? Like it's like, let's kind of get over ourselves for a quick second.
Right.
But yeah, it's a skill that like you don't, or I didn't learn, or I was never told that it was a skill, I suppose is the best way to put it. But it's just business to business type networking. So
as you kind of get like to wrapping the show up today, do you have, or sorry, were you given a piece of advice, or what is a piece of advice that you were given when you were younger that has stayed true as you've gotten older?
Like as far as like work goes, or just in
we can go in general. Actually, we can do both, but I feel you've answered that before earlier. So
let me just think about this one for a quick sec. Piece of advice. There's the classic one, like I heard it at a young age, like if you do a job you love, you'll never work a day in your life, which like I believed for a while until you start running your own like small business. It can be very hard. And then all of a sudden the hobby that you used to love becomes like the bane of your existence. So maybe not that one. But Just give me a second here. I'll think of something. And like, it's so hard not to sound cheesy either. Oh, here's a great one. In 2002, I went to the NHL awards. I was in grade 7, and I went to the NHL awards because I've had diabetes since I was 10, and the Canadian Diabetes Association used to be the major sponsor of the NHL awards gala. So there was a portion of like the cocktail hour or there was a dinner after or something. I was in grade 7, so I couldn't wrap my head around cocktail hours and galas and everything like that at that time. But I got to see all my hockey heroes, so it was like a grade 7's dream. It was insane.
No kidding.
But anyway, the portion of the proceeds from that evening would go towards the Canadian Diabetes Association. And I have a lot of respect for them. They do great work. I ended up working with them after I graduated from Acadia for a year, and they're good people doing honest work. And so anyway, I was at the NHL awards, and I met Lanny McDonald, who won a Stanley Cup with the Calgary Flames. And,
no way.
Yeah, and he told me, he just said dream big dreams, because like he explained that like he was just a kid from the prairies or wherever Lanny's from, kid from rural Ontario. Let's fact check that. I don't know exactly where he's from. He's a kid from rural Canada, and now all of a sudden he is like a hockey icon.
Oh,
and
100%.
It's all because he believed in himself as a kid and did the thing that he loved every single day. That whole week was like, if I can go back and think about like one specific like life altering thing in my life, it was going there that week. And this was something that I only realized in like the last year or so, because I was a presenter that evening, like with Ron McLean and on stage, and it was the year that Canada had won at Salt Lake City. So it was like, I mean, Jerome McGinley scored 50 that year. It was I sat next to Daryl Sittler, whose son is also diabetic. So like we hit it off that night. Like it was just, there's not enough time to tell the stories of that. Nickelback was the lie. Like they were huge. Like How You Remind Me was the biggest thing in Canadian music history that year. And anyway, it showed me, it wasn't like a one-off, like I'm meeting a celebrity. I met 100 people that I've only ever seen on TV. I'm 11 years old. This is like the biggest holy shit 72 hours of my life.
Yeah.
But it was amazing how normalized it got and how quickly, and how I saw the production of everything. I saw the dress rehearsal of everything. I was in the green room. I watched my dad have a beer with Scotty Bowman and Wayne Gretzky. Like all these crazy things happen like in such a short period of time. And then you have all these people who are they're also seeing some of their hockey icons. You know what I mean? Like, so those 72 hours just show me it's like, it is attainable. Like whatever it is attainable as long as you like work your ass off like these people did. Like this world exists, I guess, was the biggest takeaway for me. Was like, I'm sure I left that weekend being like, I'm going to play in the NHL. And then that didn't happen. But thankfully I found movies. But seeing that environment was completely life-changing. And
wow.
Yeah, so then the rest of my life, I just always had that in the back of my mind that like, these people exist. It does happen. It can be done. Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And it's not often, I don't talk about the awards that often because it's like rare that I'm like given an opportunity to speak about it. Because usually if I'm ever like in situations like these, we're talking about movies and stuff. So yeah, thank you for having me go down memory lane.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, it was sick.
That's incredible. I can't Oh man, I'm trying to visualize myself in that scenario and like, wow,
Yeah, to this day,
wow.
it's the most nervous I've ever been in my entire life. Like
Yeah, I
I,
was gonna
it's
ask.
it's the only time that I legitimately thought like 2 minutes before something, I was like, can I get out of this? Because I think I'm gonna throw up. Like I can't do this. There's no way I can do this. And then like actually walking on stage, nationally televised, everything. And then I did it. I probably blacked out the whole time. But like, and then that was a lesson too. It's like, well, you can do it. Like you can
Yeah.
do it. You're here and you're doing it. So yeah, just a lot of life lessons that came out of that
Nice.
week. And I was able to go. I went to the show. My dad came up with me, and my dad's a huge hockey fan. Like we just both had like the time of our at the time of our lives that time. And we always joke around that like I think it was my 19th. No, it wouldn't have been my 19th. But when they switched it to Vegas, now the NHL awards are always in Vegas. It's like that would have been cool if I was 19 and in Vegas or 21 and in Vegas. But like,
Yeah.
I'll take the 11-year-old learning all those things and meeting these like absolute legends.
Yeah.
It was nuts.
Jeez, man. That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So as we kind of come to the end, where can people find you? Where can people connect with you? Where can people read about you? Where can people see your films, hear from you? Red
Okay.
carpet's yours, man.
Yeah. I'm just gonna double check something super quick. Um, I always get my work Instagram mixed up, whether like what the actual handle is, which is terrible. I don't run it anymore, which is great, but it's terrible that I don't know it. Okay. Okay. I You can follow along with Pub Crawl and anything that we're working on Instagram. It's at Popular Demand Pictures. And then my personal Instagram is at Johnny Mann, which is JONNYMANN.
Nice. So I really appreciate you being able to do this today. I'm a big
Of
fan.
course, thank you for having me.
Yeah,
Oh
no
man.
worries. I'm a big fan. I'm really glad I was able to talk with you, pick your brain, and I look forward to chat with you in the future. So thank you very much for coming on the show,
Yeah,
John.
anytime.
All right
Super
on.
appreciate it. Thank you.